Chapter 343, Unobstructing the Liver, Part 2-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan felt regret the instant the words left his mouth. Moya must have cursed him in secret for him to disregard the consequences of blocking the barrel of a loaded gun with his body. No matter his regrets, words once spoken could never be swallowed back down. The incurred consequences revealed themselves at the first instance. The husband and wife, Luo Nan's uncle and aunt, cast their gazes upon Luo Nan one after another. First there was skepticism, then there was vigilance. Your friend and their boss. What kind of work, what kind of company is it? The questions came in sequential order, but the meaning within them were the same. Luo Nan knew he had prodded the hornet's nest. He was incapable of explaining how his introverted homebody self was able to suddenly become interested in the companies of society. He could only brace himself as he responded by avoiding the major points and focusing on the trifling points. I haven't agreed yet. They're probably just talking for show anyhow. Luo Yingying stared unwaveringly into her nephew's eyes. The problem right now is, why is this company interested in you? Why can't they be interested in me? Luo Nan forced himself to be thick-skinned, preparing himself to be pestered endlessly. Mo Heihang made a gesture before Luo Yingying could continue speaking, pausing his wife. He maintained his subtle smile and spoke gently. Let me ask, why haven't you agreed? Is it because the payment isn't good enough? Or is it because you don't have enough time? Mo Heihang didn't wait for Luo Nan to finish speaking. It's right to have a cautious attitude. No matter the age, working hours and payment are both very important the moment a work relationship is formed. How much are they paying you? Luo Nan was stupefied the moment his uncle asked for details. He was lost in thought for a while before responding. We haven't discussed this yet. If you're going to discuss it, there's no harm in having your aunt as an advisor. She's a highly experienced member of HR in a large company. She specializes in these things. She's very experienced in cheating others and letting people cheat. Luo Nan immersed himself in his food, giving a muffled response. Oh, sure. Luo Yingying gave her husband a glare, but she was very clear on some of the routines in their marriage of several dozen years. She immediately changed the way she talked. Working to support yourself is good. What's that company called? I can help you research deeper for now. I should be able to find out their average pay. You'll have an advantage when you negotiate pay with them. She had been a professional in HR for many years. Her network was ample when it came to supervising human resources. She was very familiar with this line of work. She already opened up a professional inquiry software as she spoke. All of Xia City's regular companies could be found within. The actions of this husband and wife were amiable, but in reality, they caused pressure with each of their steps. Luo Nan's mind wasn't really working by now, and he never was good at lying. He began to divulge his secrets. I think they're called Hidden Indigo. Hidden Indigo Corporation. It should be a firm. Luo Nan buried half of his face in his food. Otherwise, he would be revealing the sweat on his forehead with absolute clarity. Right now, he realized why he was able to put himself in sorry and difficult situations, antagonizing countless people within this short amount of time. His impulses were far too deadly. Luo Yingying quickly obtained search results. The Hidden Indigo Firm. Oh, there are registered information and tax records. They primarily provide legal and business consultations. They look quite standard. What's the name of the boss recruiting you? Wu, Luo Nan coughed. I only know that her last name is Wu. Wu Zhao, Luo Shuqing read the name of the firm's owner, and the dinner table instantly drowned in awkwardness. Long live Her Majesty, Empress Wu. Luo Nan let out a long sigh. There was now a starting point. Hold on. Wu Zhao, why not be simply called Wu Zetian? Why Wu Zhao, the name the Tang Empress Wu Zetian gave herself after rising to power? Mo Heihang's fingers rapped lightly against the dinner table, and his brows furrowed. There were naturally many unreliable parents in this world. There were many parents who gave odd names to their kids. But there were extremely few parents who named their kids after historical, unique, and controversial characters. More importantly, this violated current legal statutes. Mo Heihang, holding a position in the Social Privileges Department, would never pass such registration applications. But at this moment, this was the situation. This Mrs. Wu Zhao was grandiosely using this name, and she registered a standard firm under it. His many years of experience working at the SCA told him that this Wu Zhao, her firm, and the corresponding registered information were complete bogus from head to tail. This was a mockery of the public agencies of authority. This meant that she was a person of great capabilities, being able to openly bypass certain rules of society. Of course, this also meant that she was certainly very willful. It was impossible for Mo Heihang to immediately verify his assessments. He also didn't say them out loud. Though his thoughts coursed with electricity, a smile still remained on his face. He asked, "They took the initiative to express interest in you. This is great. This shows that you're skilled in something that is useful to their business. What is it specifically?" "Oh yes, what was it?" Luo Nan was a bit out of it. He more or less held a cautious attitude toward the reason why Her Majesty Empress Wu recruited him. His body hid precious secrets, so it was unavoidable for him to be suspicious. He didn't have an answer right now, but he couldn't stop talking. He could only wring his brain dry as he combed through all his skills known to his family. Luckily, he had a flash of inspiration before he was able to wring his brain to death. He combined it with today's experience and found a good justification. "They like my ability to make quick sketches." "Quick sketches?" Luo Nan's response was outside his guardian's expectations. They locked gazes with each other once more. They truly did know of Luo Nan's ability to draw quick sketches. He really could sketch realistic drawings in a short period of time, but what was the usefulness of this skill? Luo Shuqing immediately asked, "What does the hidden Indigo Firm have such employees do?" "Seems like it's detective work, or something like that. Quite a few people carry anti-recording devices nowadays. Some matters are hard to work with and may even draw vigilance in the opposition. They recruit people like me to try and see." "Private detective," Luo Shuqing's brow locked deadly tight. "This sort of work." "Yes, I also feel that this sort of work is quite odd, but it's hard to directly refuse in consideration of my friend's reputation. Once 2 days pass and their excitement dies down, I'll refuse them then, and things will be good." Luo Nan said everything in a single breath, sighing a hidden breath of relief in the end. He finally completed the circular chain of logic, but if he were to continue, he would certainly implode. He immediately ate the food on the dinner table, like blazing winds blasting away clouds, and stood up. "It should be like this. Aunt, uncle, you two relax. I won't get mixed up in society. Oh, they should have sent the materials for today's makeup lesson. I have some homework I need to do. I'll go upstairs." He didn't even collect his bowl and chopsticks. He just turned around and walked away. Luo Shuqing wanted to stop him with her voice, but Mo Heihang did a placating gesture. They locked gazes once more, and Luo Shuqing discovered that her husband's bearing was very solemn. Luo Nan made it up to the second floor with just a few steps. He jumped into his room and locked the door. He finally relaxed, lying on his bed. He rocked a few times and began to roll with his head tucked in his arms. Luo Nan, you pig, you fool, you idiot. His mumbling voice abused himself for a round to break up the hate within himself, but soon he began to feel diffident in his heart. His two guardians should be mulling over his matter at the moment. His excuse was full of mistakes. He wouldn't make it through easily. For today's sake, he had to perform a bit of detective work. Ah no, a bit of spy work. Yes, with his mental sensing ability, the conversations between his aunt and uncle wouldn't remain as mysteries to him. By then, he should be able to wade through any suspicions without difficulty, right? With a plan in mind, Luo Nan was about to make a move, but then the Hexia came on and transmitted information to him. He Yueyin, who had been busy handling tasks, was calling him. Chapter 344, Unobstructing the Liver, Part 33. Translator, Strivon. Were you looking for me, Mr. Luo? He Yueyin's voice came through the Hexia. Her voice was low and hoarse. She was probably quite weary. Luo Nan mumbled, unable to respond at the first instance. He had recalled the example bamboo pole gave earlier, and he knew that He Yueyin experienced a lot of stress. Luo Nan felt a bit embarrassed for constantly bothering her. Mr. Luo. Although He Yueyin spoke with a questioning tone, her attitude remained gentle. So it's like this, bamboo pole just mentioned that. Luo Nan did his best to make a long story short. He told He Yueyin about the matter of bamboo pole making extra money by representing Her Majesty Empress Wu in recruiting him. Naturally, he asked He Yueyin for her opinion in the end. He Yueyin didn't respond immediately. She was silent for about half a minute before speaking. She didn't rush to answer Luo Nan's question, but instead inquired for more details. This included the examples bamboo pole spoke of that Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed to say. She asked all these details one by one. Luo Nan was ultimately pressured by He Yueyin to recount the situation at the time. He felt very awkward, feeling like he was a little guy sowing discord among others. He Yueyin didn't really care about this. She thought things over for a while before saying, Mr. Luo, are you mulling over whether or not to join? Or are you mulling over Her Majesty Empress Wu's intentions? She hit the nail on the head with those words. Luo Nan already pondered on this matter for quite some time, and now he was forced by He Yueyin to recollect these events. Luo Nan's thoughts were more or less clear. Why should he join the hidden Indigo Firm? Zhang Yingying had introduced him in the past. This firm's main business was providing services for the rich and powerful big shots of Xia City. They sought rich suckers and established interpersonal relationships for business with them, for investments and the like. This wasn't the life Luo Nan wanted, unless there were generous rewards. There wasn't really anything Luo Nan could hide. He immediately responded, I don't understand Her Majesty Empress Wu's thoughts. Hold on. I don't think she's in a rush to recruit me. A light bulb went off in his mind just as he spoke, changing the latter half of his words as well as their meaning. He Yueyin didn't express an opinion for Luo Nan's change. She asked, why do you think so? You know that the firm did an outsourcing of work a few days ago. This sort of method suits me. At the very least, it's more suitable than joining the firm. If she didn't outsource this work to me, I might have really joined them in my poor financial state. She has this better method that would certainly influence the recruitment, but she's not using it. Don't you think so too? Luo Nan became a bit diffident as he spoke. He urgently sought He Yueyin's opinion. He Yueyin responded, "There are no problems with your overall reasoning." Really? I just need to correct one point. According to Her Majesty Empress Wu's temperament, the business opportunity you obtained should be a type of compensation. Luo Nan expressed his confusion. He Yueyin explained for him, "Looking at your narrative of the circumstances, Bamboo Pole's assessment toward Her Majesty Empress Wu is quite an appropriate one. Her Majesty Empress Wu engages in the rule of law with all her matters, while not engaging in ethics. She appears to not be bothered about the trifles in the day-to-day, but she is actually extremely strict. She treats others and herself this way." This wasn't merely it. Bamboo Pole had mentioned this point in his past lessons. He had even given a few examples. But Luo Nan's mind went a bit off track the instant he thought of Zhang Yingying. He really was incapable of imagining how that sister was able to survive under the pressure of such a strict boss. It was very difficult to establish a relevant impression. Now He Yueyin said similar things before his eyes and was unable to change his disbelief. Strictness is strictness. The more I hear it, the more I don't want to join. How is this related with compensation? Because of headquarters. He Yueyin exposed the truth with a few words. The operation headquarters carried out against you was done after Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang decided to protect you. The situation had been critical, and although Black Beetle was the reason for the offensive that was coordinated inside and outside our organization, oversights are still oversights. Her Majesty Empress Wu is exacting on both herself and others. She feels that mending the pen after the sheep is lost is still something that needs to be done. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for Yingying to give this several million credit project to you, even if Yingying is different from a normal person. Luo Nan suddenly understood. No wonder. In other words, good things just didn't fall out of the sky in this world. The restless feeling brought about by the great generosity of the business reward vanished like a puff of smoke. So it was an exchange for using his life. Of course, the principles of Her Majesty Empress Wu and Zhang Yingying's care and attention were still engraved in his mind. After He Yueyin explained the reason for the compensation, the conversation changed topics once more. "Based on what you said about this recruitment, Her Majesty Empress Wu probably doesn't have much expectations from you entering the hidden Indigo Firm. Her attitude is expressed clearly by letting Bamboo Pole convey her intent." What attitude? Her Majesty Empress Wu is a well-known progressive. In the last few years, she devoted her efforts into establishing completely new rules of society, allowing ability users to seamlessly integrate into normal society. Naturally, it is easier for younger people to exert influence when it comes to realizing and spreading her theories. In fact, she likes to teach potential youngsters who have made a name for themselves. Bamboo Pole mentioned this before. So you're saying Her Majesty Empress Wu is showing appreciation for me. A rarely heard chuckle came from He Yueyin. Showing, that's a good usage of the word. Luo Nan's mind wound around a circle. You're saying that she's showing, not to me, but to others as a widely advertised display. If it's not, would Her Majesty Empress Wu have conveyed her words through Bamboo Pole? Would Bamboo Pole allow you to openly ask others for advice? This is to spread public opinion. This is to expand influence. It is a declaration of her stance specifically toward those who have a mind. With this, if the people of headquarters still want to make a move against you, they will need to consider the factor of Her Majesty Empress Wu getting deeply involved. Bamboo Poles spoke very correctly. Official business and private business are ultimately different. The greatest ideal takes into account both private and public interests. Luo Nan finally understood the winding maneuvers within those schemes. He let out a long breath of relief, but he still felt some complex emotions. So, the so-called recruitment is just in name. It's hollow, I say. He Yueyin's voice turned gentle. She spoke softly, Mr. Luo shouldn't undervalue himself. Her Majesty Empress Wu is strict on others and on herself. Her scope of vision is extremely high. If Mr. Luo's level isn't enough, she wouldn't even give you a glance, let alone adopt this stance. Frankly speaking, this too is an expression of goodwill, as well as an investment for the future. It's all right, Sister Yueyin. I'm not someone who's super sensitive. I know my position. With Her Majesty Empress Wu clearly verbalizing her protection over me, what else can I hope for? Luo Nan responded with a brisk tone. After dispelling the confusion, he felt truly embarrassed to be taking up more of He Yueyin's time. He said, Sister Yueyin, I feel much better after you've explained things. You must be busy on your end. I'll let you hurry back to your work. I have homework and evening classes as well. It's nothing, it was just some business work I already finished. On the contrary, you're so packed with homework lately, how can you endure it? It isn't a problem. So you don't mind. Luo Nan suddenly realized that he had narrated Bamboo Pole's example and assessment back to He Yueyin. Bamboo Pole's words couldn't be said to be good. Of course, Luo Nan was really quite the fool to be asking her. Mind what? It's just Her Majesty Empress Wu taking the chance to strike a blow. Bamboo Pole wants you to consult with many people. He's certainly factored me as one of those people. Those words were mainly spoken for me to hear. This is probably because I've been too hasty in my actions within the branch. Sister Yueyin, Luo Nan didn't know what was good to say for a time. From Bamboo Pole's assessment, he knew that He Yueyin experienced an enormous amount of stress. If another extraordinary expressed their disapproval, He Yueyin might become even more encumbered with dealing with affairs in the future. He Yueyin comforted Luo Nan in his worries about this. You know your position, and I know mine. Bamboo Pole said that my goals are much clearer than yours. Actually, he's wrong. Your goals are just as clear. It's just that many aspects are involved when it comes to realizing them. Like the interchanging of darkness and light, it's far too complicated. It's hard to get started. Yes, this is the truth. He Yueyin's words really did speak to the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. His goals, whether it be his grandfather's reputation or his mother's work of art, all involved many layers and many powers that entwined with each other. He didn't have the strength to break them, nor did he have the blade to cut through this tangled mess. It was as if He Yueyin could hear his thoughts. She said, since the situation is like this, there is no harm in me telling you an old saying. A sharpened blade is half the work of cutting a tree. If you really don't have a way to get started, then you can just sharpen your blade. Hone a sharp blade, for there will be a day of troubles. I know, Sister Yueyin, I will certainly work hard. Luo Nan couldn't help smiling upon speaking. He felt like a little student promising to study hard. He Yueyin didn't mind. She spoke softly. Your ability to mentally interfere with matter has just manifested. This is of the utmost importance. You must be careful. You're no longer willing to visit Bai Xinyan, but there's no harm in running to the Divine Yu Gym more often. Their techniques in cultivating the energies of the body are quite impressive. Yes, Gym Master Zhu is really a wealth of knowledge. Luo Nan spoke with sincerity. He Yueyin paused a bit before suddenly asking, "Are you still cultivating the eye's orifice?" Yes, Gym Master Zhu said that when I get initial success with the eye's orifice, I must consolidate it until I understand yin and yang from the inside and out. Then I need to cultivate the ear's orifice and the mouth orifice. The three essentials must be cultivated to completion, coalesce essence, energy, and spirit. Only then can I proceed to the next step. He Yueyin gave a soft grunt of approval before saying, 9 orifices, 3 essentials. Through the inner organs, coalesce essence and energy and purify the mind. This is the proper cultivation path. There's no harm in cultivating in earnest. But you need not bother with strange tales and absurd arguments, delirious ravings and daydreams. Luo Nan didn't understand what He Yueyin meant by delirious ravings and daydreams. But by the time he snapped back to reality, He Yueyin already bid him good night and ended the call. This was quite odd. Why did she suddenly say such words? It seemed that He Yueyin was very familiar with Gym Master Zhu. Luo Nan maintained a faint awareness amidst his confusion. He heard the sound of a door closing on the first story. It was Mo Peng. He had his fill of fun outside, entering the house free of worries. This reminded Luo Nan that he had to eavesdrop on the dialogue between his aunt and uncle. But when his soul's strength covered the house, he discovered that his guardians were lecturing Mo Peng in the living room. They weren't talking about Luo Nan's matters for now. Luo Nan listened for a few minutes without gaining anything of value. He simply collected his mind and proceeded to do work. He finished his homework and took out the basic physics exercises that worker Zhao had prepared for him. He pondered, tackling the problems. His energy was fine and thorough from the meshing of the god gear and body gear, allowing his concentration to reach a level that few could attain when he truly put his mind to it. Soon 2 hours passed, and it was already past 10 at night. Luo Nan stretched his back in accordance to the Taoyin techniques taught to him by Gym Master Zhu. He loosened his joints, relaxing and stretching level by level. His body, wrapped in muscle, bone, skin, and flesh, cracked and crunched endlessly for a moment. Warm moisture circulated at the same time. It was extremely comfortable. Blood is sufficient in the fascia as it is drawn from the liver, meaning that the liver is full of blood right now. Things are gradually maturing. Perhaps maturity will happen in the next 2 days. Chapter 345, Sound Heard in the Night. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan put everything to rest and rolled onto the bed. He stripped until he was just wearing his underwear. He calmed his breathing and did his evening exercises. A thin layer of sweat appeared on his body after half an hour of Taoyin breathing exercises, but the states of his body and mind were restored to their peak. The flame of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice radiated within his head from beginning to end. Luo Nan stirred with intent, and the heart lantern flickered, casting its glimmering light into his inner organs. Gym Master Zhu once said that after achieving initial success in cultivating in the eye's orifice, the light to observe within would become like the sun, and the moon illuminating the mountains and rivers. Even if one couldn't completely understand the marvels of vitality, nothing would be missed. One could even pierce the clouds and break through the fog, revealing the essence of mist. Luo Nan observed himself internally with psychic illumination. He saw the structure of his inner organs. They were shaped like lumps. They were like high cliffs looking over ravines, towering mountains of rock strewn at random, their outlines dim. Luo Nan disregarded these shapes. He just used his mind, the light of his eyes illuminating below with the rotation of the sun and the moon. He locked on to the life gate located at the lower spine. He heated and refined the life essence there, pouring it into the bed of the perineum. The perineum filled with yang energy, which then naturally rushed up to immerse his inner organs. What happened in this instant was truly akin to water being sprayed on magma. Vital energy sputtered and boiled into vapor, alike the whirling of iridescent clouds. The myriad of extremes deformed. Luo Nan felt an omen the instant he heated and refined his life essence. After a fright came delight. Fill the mountains with mists of energy by refining with the pill furnace. I have reached this step in the technique of refining essence to energy. I've almost reached the limit. The next step is to grind down the mountains and redevelop the fields of blessing. No wonder the gym master said that I first need to obtain a torrential flood to pour and overflow the passes before making a decision. The maturity is sufficient. It will clearly happen today. It must be said that Luo Nan, with his body and soul structure in imbalance, had an obstruction between the internal and the external. He had no choice but to use the vital energy of his entire body to nourish the eye's orifice and form the body gear. Only then could he draw upon the towering and vast power of the god gear. In fact, channeling the power of this grinding gear carried substantial risk. If Luo Nan didn't comprehend the technique of coupling, he might have had to endure several months' worth of torment and undergo some augmentation surgery in order to maintain the frail balance between his body and soul. But things could only move in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme in this world. The moment Luo Nan received his mother's blessings in obtaining comprehension over coupling, he was able to cross the most difficult of junctures. The crisis transformed, allowing him to reap greater benefits. When normal people cultivated internal refinement techniques, they relied completely on water-grinding arts. This could take any possible amount of time to reach the level that could fill the mountains with mists of energy by refining with the pill furnace. Be it 77 days, 88 days, 99 days, or even 100 days, a year or 3 years. But in Luo Nan's case, the potential energy of formatting theory was truly far too large. A glacier suspended tall above a vast body of water. Even if a bit of its power was channeled, that power was subject to loss in interference. And yet, this power would still boldly forge its way forward. When Luo Nan obtained initial success with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, the limits of interfering the material with the mental was broken open. It had already gone out of hand within the last 7 days. In the instant, a mere few thoughts flashed in Luo Nan's mind. The mist energy coalesced within his chest and abdomen. The energy were dyed in 5 colors. The liver and gallbladder locations were most particular. The green energy glowed slightly. It was very dense. According to Oriental classical theory, the pure eye's orifice was akin to the mouth of a spring, and its source laid below. There was something called, inside and outside the liver and the gallbladder, open an orifice at the eyes, grasp its splendor, and fill the muscles. Luo Nan's success with the eye's orifice wasn't merely the opening of an orifice in the middle of his forehead. He had opened an entire set of mechanisms and systems with the liver, and its mechanisms influenced everything in the entire body. It involved the liver, the gallbladder, the eyes, the fingers, the fascia, and so on. The system seemed to jump all over the place, but in fact, it was linked in one breath. This was what Gym Master Zhu meant when he said, "The body is a mountain range with dense vegetation and thick soil. The breath is like the length of flowing water, winding and moving." I have finally opened through to the fountainhead of the eye's orifice reservoir. I finally obtained flowing water. Before, Luo Nan had exhausted all the vital energy of his body to open a way to the eye's orifice, and received the terrifying might of the god Gear with great difficulty. The vast ocean iceberg continued to channel soul strength to him, and his simple eye's orifice was merely a reservoir the size of a pond. There were limits to how much it could endure. Even though Luo Nan was using coupling, the repeated clashes from the god Gear caused his pupils to crack like ice and lightning to flare within. But right now, his situation was different. The eye's orifice now had a path to the blood and energy of his liver and gallbladder, and this could even transfer to the fascia of his entire body. If he continued to clear away the obstructions, he would be able to get through to the inner organs, the muscles, the bones, and the skin and hair one after another. The amount he could endure from the god Gear would dramatically increase, as he would form the true body gear that would revolve without end. He could be said to have obtained a path from the internal to the external. Luo Nan's hard times were over, and the good times were just beginning. Just feeding off the power of the god Gear was enough for a while of good enjoyment. It was now midnight. The energy of his liver was appropriate. After feeling emotions of delight, Luo Nan repressed his excitement and fixed his mind. He carefully adjusted and guided his energy to clear the obstructions. He hungered for a complete success. His efforts this time caused 2 hours to pass in the blink of an eye. He waited as the yin and yang of his liver and gallbladder automatically conditioned the fire of the heart and the water of the liver. As they circulated, Luo Nan naturally woke up. He opened his eyes and his thoughts stirred. He felt a sensation, and he knew that it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. At the moment, he was overflowing with essence energy. His mind was fresh and invigorated, not suitable for going back to sleep. But this wasn't part of his usual tempo when it came to work and rest. He was mulling over what to do when his mind pulsed once more. There was someone speaking nearby, and they even mentioned his name. Based on the level of Luo Nan's mental senses, he could glimpse and see the information of every living being within a range of several kilometers if he put his mind to it. It was just that the information was far too complex, and Luo Nan was affected by his long-time use of his soul's strength. This added to his burden, so Luo Nan maintained his mental senses at a radius of 12 meters in his day-to-day life. Most of the time, his mental senses remained in a standby state. He only reacted when faced with evil intentions and other dangers. But the sensitivity of his mental senses increased substantially, possibly due to his great progress in his cultivation just now, and the way it presented itself was quite different from before. His mind was akin to a smooth lake reflecting the countless stars. It seemed to be the inverted image of the distant, starry sky, and the corresponding information joined and transformed to compose more tangible images of people's figures. This included their speech, and it was all reflected in the mind lake. Oh, it's aunt and uncle, right, who else can it be? The two elders were in their bedroom. They were lying side by side atop their bed. They whispered in conversation, It looked like they hadn't slept at all this night, talking all the way until now. Even though Luo Nan possessed an inconceivable mental sensing ability, he wasn't someone who would go eavesdropping on people in his daily life. He just heard his name, and last night he committed quite the folly, so he couldn't help feeling a bit diffident. He was curious. I'll just listen for a bit, just for tonight. Luo Nan gave himself an excuse before truly putting his mind to sensing. This time, he was like an invisible ghost hiding within his aunt and uncle's bedroom. It was as if he was there in person, listening and watching with his eyes and ears. Luo Nan was unable to retrieve what they said previously, but the first few words that entered his ear stimulated his mind. Is it Dad, or did Zhang Heng's friend come to Xia City? He was in the wilderness for 20 years, avoiding civilization all that time. With that kind of sensitive project, he's lucky to have any friends who haven't become enemies. It's impossible for any of them to show up. The one who spoke first was Aunt Luo Shuqing. The dad she spoke of was naturally Luo Zhengheng's grandfather, Luo Yuandao, and Zhengheng was Luo Nan's father, Luo Zhengheng. From Luo Nan's perspective, these two names were what he cared about the most, though the emotions toward them weren't quite the same. The mere mention of these names attracted 120% of his attention. Luo Shuqing was a bit dissatisfied with her husband's response. Don't play the fool, you know who I'm talking about. Yes, I know. But I checked the entrance and exit records of the airport. Yan Yongbo took flights over the Pacific Ocean back and forth recently. He's been to Los Angeles at least 6 times already. His troubles are obviously coming from within Quantum Corporation. Do you think they can have an influence on Quantum Corporation? Who's they? What is their relationship with Grandpa, with Dad? Luo Nan didn't understand who they were talking about, but he knew that the subject his guardians were talking about right now involved the family friend, Yan Yongbo. Also, there was the time when Yan Yongbo humiliated their family at the restaurant. Luo Nan had made a solemn vow to seize back the fame from Yan Yongbo's dad, Yan Hong. Rational or not, Yan Yongbo had the backing of Quantum Corporation, so he really gave others a lot of stress. A few days passed, and this dude suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was like having a tiger's head and a snake's tail, a strong start but a weak finish, and it made one quite suspicious. Luo Nan didn't have a complete understanding of the whole sequence of events behind this matter. But when compared to other matters of greater importance, Luo Nan had no intentions of mulling over such small details. But from the perspective of his aunt and uncle, the tiger that was Quantum Corporation was quite intimidating in normal society. Even if their family was a relatively affluent middle-class family, there was more than a level's difference when they were compared to Quantum Corporation, a capitalistic behemoth. One bad move, and the family would become bankrupt and people would die. Luo Nan couldn't help feeling ashamed thinking about this point. His aunt and uncle bore such large pressure this month, but they never mentioned it to him. Luo Nan wasn't troubled by these matters, and there were many times when he completely forgot about them. I should think of a way to comfort these two guardians. Luo Nan was mulling over this matter when he heard his aunt sneer. Do you despise vagrants? Even me, an HR worker, know that the trend of vagrants heading back to the city has been quite fierce in recent years. Some of them have their criminal records cleared. They take on new leases of life and become big bosses. There are more than 1 or 2 cases of this happening. Luo Nan's uncle sighed. Then are you hoping that a former vagrant with a cleared criminal record is helping out? That's not what I said. Luo Nan's uncle pulled out a drawer from the bedside cabinet. He took out a sealed e-cigarette. He was about to place it in his mouth, but he stopped, twirling it between his fingers instead. I would rather them stay in the wilderness forever. This group of people are used to the law of the jungle, and they are involved with religious elements. They are never lacking in craziness and ambition. When the old man was in this world, he was at least a symbol. There existed constraint. But once there's a change in the situation, I don't believe that they will reason with us. It seems likely for them to converge with the major powers of the city. I'm afraid things are about to get much livelier. Luo Shuking was quite vigilant. They've sought you out again. I haven't seen them face to face. I've just have had contact with them through the phone. They're simply requests to alter some data and the like. Whether or not it is done successfully, they remain all very polite. You've spoken correctly. There is a trend of them entering the city. The focus of Luo Shuking's attention changed. What about Nanan? Have they made contact with Nanan? Are you saying that this Wu Zhao? Luo Nan's uncle finally placed the e-cigarette into his mouth. The vapor rose into the air as he sighed. I don't know. I really don't know. In the bedroom, both the husband and wife no longer had the mood to talk. Time just passed, and the pressure from silence slowly accumulated. Luo Nan's telepathic thought remained there for a few minutes. He felt quite depressed, so it quietly withdrew. After retracting his senses, Luo Nan lay there, lost in thought. His aunt and uncle's guess over the history of Her Majesty Empress Wu went completely in the wrong direction due to the unreliability of their source of information. But the information within their dialogue made Luo Nan understand something. In this world, in a certain corner of the boundless wilderness, there actually existed a group of people that possessed a strange yet intimate relationship with his father and his grandfather. Wilderness, vagrants. All right, another loose thread suddenly appeared. It looked quite removed, but the things behind it appeared very serious. Luo Nan lay in bed, looking at the ceiling. He was in a leisurely mood, finding something to do since he had nothing to do. In an instant, his thoughts turned chaotic, existing side by side with feelings of agitation and melancholy. There were too many things he had to do, too many things that were hard to accomplish. He thought about it, and he was no longer happy with the bit of success he just obtained with internal refinement. Chapter 346, Traveling Soul, Part 1-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan was in a trance for a long time, his mind still a mess. The hour hand of the clock pointed to 4. Another hour had passed without him being aware. Luo Nan felt unwell. This extremely clear state of mind had been disturbed into soup. No, I can't keep going on like this. Luo Nan tried to shake off his bad mood. He thought of He Yueyin's teachings, and he immediately muttered aloud, "Sharpening a blade is half the work of cutting a tree. Sharpening a blade is half the work of cutting a tree. Sharpening a blade is half the work of cutting a tree." Luo Nan chanted these words over a dozen times, forcibly replacing his plethora of distracting thoughts. He got tired after a while, and he used his finger to press against his forehead. His mood slowly calmed. He didn't have any new experiences, but his muddy thoughts from before gradually turned clear. Sister Yueyin was quite considerate for giving me this chant. Actually, saying this chant 1,000 times, thinking of 1,000,000 countermeasures, boils down to a single sentence. Your F***CK, all if you're not an extraordinary. Within this month, he followed He Yueyin in understanding the ins and outs of the psychic wave network's world order. He followed bamboo pole in studying notes on the major characters of the world. Wasn't this none other than the principle he learned? Frankly speaking, the inner world comprised just a bunch of inhumans who have awakened with abilities. They ranked themselves in order of strength, establishing a simple society. Even if the inner world was influenced by the normal world, money, resources, and contacts could be used to a great degree. Strength was what determined how much one was respected. Why did Bamboo Pole have him rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu? It was because Her Majesty Empress Wu was an extraordinary. She had masterly strength and robust resources. People were awed by her. She could sever incidents that Luo Nan found impossible to handle. She could resolve problems that Luo Nan couldn't solve. In this sense, swapping Her Majesty Empress Wu for any other extraordinary would achieve a similar result. At most, there would be a difference of service. Of course, swapping would be meaningless if Luo Nan was an extraordinary himself. The majority of incidents wouldn't have happened, and even if they did, they would rapidly reach a resolution. This was the special position that extraordinaries hold. If Luo Nan could resolve things by himself, he naturally wouldn't want to rely on others. But the truth of the matter was that he was far from the level of an extraordinary. Right now, he could barely be considered a blunt blade. To grind this blade to a sharp edge and conquer every obstacle before him would require him to smash through a lot of hard work. He Yueyin had advised him with this common saying, "Sharpening a blade is half the work of cutting a tree," because she was quite worried about him losing patience and confidence from the tedious and difficult process. Luo Nan wasn't that careless and worthless, but to say that he was someone very patient would be a lie. He was willing to pay with blood, sweat, and tears in order to hone his blade. He could endure whatever hardships, no matter how bitter. But if this process was crude and clumsy, like the gradual step-by-step of the water-grinding arts, then he wouldn't be able to bear it. His grandfather was on the verge of death. He couldn't wait. The flaming enemies with vicious intent wouldn't wait either. Luo Nan didn't want to leave behind irreparable regrets. Moreover, he didn't want to have his head cleaved by the sword of a powerful enemy before matters could be resolved. Put in more effort, progress even faster. This was none other than the cultivation tempo he desired. To achieve this, he had to rely on nothing but two things. The first was formatting theory and coupling. The second was the internal body refinement technique taught to him by Gym Master Zhao, which cultivated essence and energy. The latter involved personal guidance from Gym Master Zhao. The path was clear, the sequence distinct. Luo Nan wasn't scared of missteps. It was of the utmost efficiency. But this sort of internal refinement technique, regardless of it being breathing techniques or opening orifices, all required particular attention to maturity. One must not advance prematurely. For instance, currently, it wasn't appropriate for Luo Nan to make any impatient actions, having just honed the eye's orifice into perfection. He needed his body to settle for several days, then see. So this left only one thing that could be further carved for results. Formatting theory. Luo Nan understood very well that his cultivation progress in internal refinement was shocking. Part of it was due to a sharpening influence from formatting theory, the transformation of the enormous potential energy of the vast ocean glacier. Today, his cultivations in the eye's orifice was completed, and he would still need to rely on the power of formatting theory for the next step in his cultivations. No matter which ways he went about it, formatting theory was his most fundamental and key research. He dedicated himself to forging ahead. He couldn't slack off at all. And there was a state most appropriate for pondering formatting theory. The clock pointed to 4:10 a.m. Luo Nan looked at his daily schedule using his hexia. He had around an hour to go before his regular morning exercise routine. Luo Nan didn't get up, having estimated the time. He just slightly closed his eyes and said, "Come out," in his mind. Chains shook within the void, its pulling force coming out of nowhere. It pulled his soul to leave his body with a shudder. Yes, what Luo Nan wanted to do was astral travel, in an out-of-body state. Formatting theory itself was flawed. Its hidden dangers were large, one of which was the imbalance between body and soul, the unconventional explosive surge of soul strength. And the times when soul strength exploded the most fiercely was often when the soul left the body. After the event at Frost River Reality, Luo Nan's imbalance between body and soul had reached a critical level. He had to seal up this technique and stop using it. However, was formatting theory still formatting theory, without the explosive increase in soul's strength? Luo Nan inherited this theory of his grandfathers. He desired to reform and improve it to perfection. This process was bound to be filled with constant trial and error. Now, how would he do this trial and error? Naturally, he had to make errors in order to make revisions. Luo Nan was in a critical state in the past from the imbalance between body and soul. He lost all room to make mistakes. However, with his progress in his cultivations, with the constant revolving of his body gear, his foundation turned deep. His ability to deal with risks greatly increased. There were some things he had to put on the agenda. He had to keep going. Or should he just wait for the blade to cleave into his body, awaiting death with closed eyes? Luo Nan didn't want to close his eyes and wait to die. He had to open his eyes to look at this world. He had to use the perspective of formatting theory to make scientific analyses. Then he had to put it into practice to verify the results. He had to push forward like this, level by level, using the greatest of efforts to climb to the level of extraordinary at the fastest speed possible. I can do it, I have to do it. Luo Nan's conviction grew clear. His soul floated outside his body. Like a fish, he softly leapt into the boundless and endless mental ocean. The range of his senses instantly expanded by tenfold, by 100-fold. His telepathic mind stirred, and he saw his fleshly body in its sleep-like state. He swept his vision to look at his quiet yet awake guardians, and his soul body flickered as it disappeared into the void. Without the burden of the fleshly body, the soul body's movement speed only depended on the spatial interference strength Luo Nan could employ with his methods and skills. It wasn't an oddity to be able to travel several kilometers in a single thought. Luo Nan left his living community far away in the blink of an eye, entering the depths of the metropolis, which was on the verge of waking in this early morning. His soul wandered in the city, and seemingly familiar, yet unfamiliar feelings accumulated in layers. In the past, nearly every time Luo Nan went in an out-of-body state, he was in deadly and dangerous situations. He was just purely observing and perceiving. Times like this were rare. The life sketches of every living being within the area he could sense appeared one after another. Together, they formed a deep starry sky that continued to expand. The starry sky of life overlapped with the night sky of reality, turning into a labyrinth interwoven on the mental plane and the material plane. This labyrinth possibly even held unknown and precious treasures within. This was an experience that was difficult to grasp in a normal state. Luo Nan wasn't bewildered by the labyrinth. He soon confirmed a direction. He moved like a demon of the night, hidden at times and disappearing at times. But he pressed forward in a straight line. He didn't avoid any of the tall buildings or flying vehicles. He just went through them all. It was now 4:20 am, only 10 minutes had passed, and Luo Nan's soul body was already flying in the skies above Pingjiang district. He took Acumen College, and even the building complex of Cloud City Water Village, which jutted into the clouds, into the range of his senses. Chapter 347, Traveling Soul, Part 2-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan was quite shocked after checking the time. Acumen College was around 80 kilometers away from his aunt's house. It took exactly an hour to get to it when one followed the speed limit of the city. He had just spent 10 minutes to get here. In other words, the flying speed of his soul body was nearly 500 kilometers per hour. Luo Nan got a rough feel for the flying speed of the soul when he was in the out-of-body state for the very first time. He just felt that it was fast. He never thought that it was this fast. It must be known that he merely flew casually and was far from reaching his limits. If he truly put his all, it was entirely possible for his speed to increase by an entire factor. Perhaps this was the result of his catalytic progress. There were a few satellite towns added to the main city district of Xia City, so the total radius of Xia City was around 400 kilometers. This meant that he could easily reach any location in Xia City within an hour. In a night's time, he could travel a whole circle around Xia City and even travel several thousand kilometers away. The marvels of astral travel lay here. He just didn't know if any issues would come up with the order frame, which was formed from his body gear and god gear, from having his soul body be too far away. Luo Nan immediately slowed the flying speed of his soul. He spared a bit of mental energy to sense the changes in his fleshly body located 80 kilometers away. The out-of-body state caused considerable changes with the order frame of Luo Nan's body and soul. The pressure coming from his soul's strength toward his body was practically nil, but he was also separated from the external neuron. There was no longer the vast ocean iceberg structure and its massive order. The god gear didn't really live up to its name anymore. Luo Nan tried to drive the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, but there was no reaction. At this point, he was certain that a corresponding material medium was necessary for an effective interference of reality when he used the mental plane. For instance, no matter how powerful his god gear, Luo Nan's current order frame was useless in this regard, for he lacked the meshing of the body gear. Luo Nan couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed about this. In this way, the substantial uses of astral travel were rather limited. He needed to plan ahead. He needed to make a few backups of the high-imitation human-faced arachnid as long as the wraith sign wasn't here. Luo Nan pondered this matter and felt a little puzzled. Were mentally enhanced ability users like Mr. Bai and Old Man Yu, who definitely possessed the astral travel ability, like this in their out-of-body states? It didn't seem so. How else would they show their skills in their day-to-day lives? He pondered this from different angles, but was unable to get the gist of it. He was even thinking of giving He Yueyin a proposal, add a course on the applications of the out-of-body state. In any case, it was impossible for him to resolve this issue tonight. Luo Nan collected his mind, giving up on useless, distracting thoughts. With a flicker of his soul body, he arrived in the skies above Cloud City Water Village. He locked on the viewing platform atop Ocean Sky Cloud City and drifted down. It was the wee hours of 4 o'clock in the morning. There naturally wouldn't be anybody there on the viewing platform. It was desolate and quiet. When Luo Nan's soul's strength cut across, though he had no effects toward the material plane, he made contact with the consciousness of a living being via the mental plane. Within the central crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the mutant devil ray was resting and floating in the water. It suddenly became excited. It swung its enormous flat body to whirl in a circle, a habitual action. It was like a giant drill as it rapidly ascended upward, heading toward the peak of the crystal pillar. It rapidly advanced toward none other than the viewing platform of the Ocean Sky Cloud City. Since Ocean Sky Cloud City held captive such a fierce creature, they naturally didn't have a lowered guard. Every night, there were professionals on duty. There were also monitoring probes of different forms playing their role. The instant the devil ray moved, its special behavior drew the alert of the monitoring system. There were groans all over within the central control room of the large building. This monster is going crazy again. A single disturbance costs hundreds of thousands. Quick, release the blocker. The so-called blocker was a defensive device that Cloud City Water Village Temporary installed after the Devil Ray had broken through the reinforced glass of the Heavenly Ocean Lake. It had no other function besides preventing the Devil Ray from punching another hole through the Heavenly Ocean Lake. The large building turned chaotic, and Luo Nan could feel it. He felt a bit embarrassed, so he imbued psychic waves into the Devil Ray, calming its agitated emotions. The Devil Ray possessed decent intelligence. Although it had been under Luo Nan's control in forced submission by the high-imitation human-faced arachnid, it had felt all sorts of novelties and fascinations. Moreover, it had reached an utterly strong state under Luo Nan's control. It both revered and feared the special frequency of Luo Nan's psychic waves. Right now, it was already ranked in Luo Nan's societal format diagram. It was located in the office worker level. According to the definitions of orders, it could be called a believer or family. Luo Nan's telepathic mind sunk downward, and the Devil Ray didn't dare resist. It immediately stopped its momentum. As it turned its body, it saw that it had alarmed its surroundings. Fish and shrimp, who were fleeing in all directions, were easily swallowed with a single bite. Ocean Sky Cloud City had blood spilled in it yet again. The gamble of the just-awakened Devil Ray would bring about great damages to relevant parties. Luo Nan's soul body stayed above the viewing platform, and he looked into the distance, at the wetlands jungle of the north bank of Acumen College. He stared, unmoving for a time. Gear was in the middle of the jungle. The viewing platform was over a dozen kilometers away from the wetlands jungle. The color of day was dark and desolate. Normal people would find Gear hard to see. But Luo Nan could see it. The distance of a dozen kilometers existed within the limits of Luo Nan's mental senses when his soul and body were together. Before, he had used the coupling of the god Gear and the body Gear to stimulate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to marvelous effects. The caressing psychic light illuminated the earth from above, taking Gear, which was within the jungle, into his clairvoyance. It was currently impossible for him to achieve coupling between the god Gear and the body Gear in his astral travel state. But since entering the out-of-body state, the range of his senses increased explosively tenfold. He was able to clearly see Gear, with pure observation. Back then, he had a magical feeling that Gear was the eye of heaven and earth, that it was a large format encompassing the entire universe. The problem was, it was difficult to trigger such feelings again, no matter how much he observed Gear. This result was within his expectations. He had already understood something the instant when his heart lantern illuminated Gear from above. The marvels contained within Gear couldn't be seen by purely the naked eye. Mental senses couldn't illuminate it clearly either. Only when the two modes of vision and mental senses were coupled to realize a polished overlap could the reality behind the exterior be touched. Only then could he ascertain how that power of order rotated within the void of heaven and earth into a genesis. Observing through pure mental senses was meaningless. If possible, Luo Nan obviously hoped to go to the viewing platform physically in person and observe Gear in the day and night with his clairvoyance. He would then take in the marvels of his experience. But this week, there had been ghosts dancing all around, all the time, regardless of the location being the viewing platform or Gear. It spoiled Luo Nan's mood. Forget it, I'll go observe up close. Luo Nan didn't choose this location for his astral travel based purely on a whim. He had a clear purpose and plan. Luo Nan's soul body flew away from Ocean Sky Cloud City. With a mere thought, he appeared within the middle of the wetlands jungle, and Gear was just ahead. At that time, all the lights were off within the building. It was pitch black, without any hint of a human. To enter this place at this time, and in this sort of setting, would require some guts. Oh, if someone really did come, Luo Nan didn't mind testing out the fellow's qualities. What a pity there was no such person here. Luo Nan's soul body went through the wall to go inside Gear. His mental senses naturally covered every space and every corner of the 12 floors above and below him. He missed not a hair. Such things was possible when his body and soul were merged. In that state, he could do even better thanks to the strengthening from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. It was more suitable to the environment of Gear. But Luo Nan often had this thought. There are people ahead of the body and eyes behind the head. He must not act willfully. So he waited until he gained success with internal refinement, reckoning that now he could endure the pressure of his soaring soul's strength. Only then did he embark forward. He didn't know if it was his imagination, but he felt a chill as he stayed in this place in the form of a soul. Chapter 348, Traveling Soul, Part 33. Translator Strivon. The early morning might be the quietest time of the day for the wetlands jungle. The activity of the birds and the beasts between the trees had plummeted to the minimum, and whatever sounds that made their way to Gear were largely blocked off. Any slight abnormality would be magnified under such an environment, evoking a sense of bizarreness. Luo Nan's soul remained unmoving. He took in this experience in detail. A dozen or so seconds passed, and he grew more certain that the chill he felt wasn't an illusion. The chill even seemed to possess a certain pattern. It was like a wisp of air moving in a circle, and it traveled back and forth inside Gear. And there was a soft dittata sound accompanying the chill as it circulated within the building. Perhaps it was because he had been listening to the sound for a while, but he felt that there existed a faint, yet exquisite relationship between the two. The exquisiteness made it so that one would perceive illusions at any given time. Luo Nan was in his out-of-body state. The precision of his mental senses had climbed to the highest summit. Normally, he wouldn't have been able to detect the subtle relationship contained within the chill. Right, this is right. Luo Nan liked this sort of discovery. This detail fit in nicely with the research and conclusions he made on the mysteries of gear. His explorations during astral travel started off nicely. He was about to stay here to engage in further study, but his brain heated up for a few seconds, and he recalled his primary purpose for today's actions. He could only suppress his impulses and go through the ground floor with his incorporeal soul. He headed toward the central control room located on the underground fourth floor. The feeling of his soul going through the ground was quite a marvelous one. The soul body relied on mental senses. Normal matter wouldn't cause any interference. But Luo Nan was used to the perceptions of the body, so it was inevitable that some mental barriers would appear in his mind. Within his eyes, the earth and steel structure formed numerous layers of shadows. It was akin to plummeting through thick clouds. They appeared solid and imposing at first glance, but then they turned as indistinct as smoke when he collided with them. He very nearly lost his sense of orientation, becoming uncertain whether he headed up toward the skies or down into the earth. Such a feeling triggered the appearance of memories from the bottom of his heart. He had experienced a similar scene a week ago, but that scene was more vivid and real. Bloody rays had pierced through an ash-gray layer of clouds, and he had gone through them just like now. An incredibly vast view of the world had been presented before him. Today, Luo Nan came here in secret. He came here to chase after that incredible experience. He had long wanted to do this, but his recent situation prevented him. His situation was a hopeless mess, so the Xia City branch kept him under strict surveillance. They protected him practically 24 hours a day. They sent him to school. They picked him up after school. On campus, Zhu Lei always wanted to stick close to him, and there were sentries on rotational duty outside his home at night. Needless to say, things were tight at gear as well. There was always construction work. All sorts of people came and went, hiding their true intentions. Monitoring occurred both inside and out. It was truly as if there were eyes coming from all directions. Luo Nan was up to his ears in work. He really was unable to find a chance. Today, he managed to astral travel through his great efforts. Naturally, the first thing he did was come here to try. The situation was now unfolding just as he intended. He had deliberately gone to Ocean Sky Cloud City to observe gear from afar because he wanted to trace back the actions that led to that experience. And his first decision after coming back to gear was to go to the starting point of that real experience. He was going to the central control room located on the underground fourth floor. Luo Nan had seen it yesterday afternoon. The central control room was entirely renovated, installed with a completely new control console. Its holographic projection showed that all equipment and installations were on standby. There was only the flashing of 2 or 3 electronic lights. Luo Nan stood before the control console. His mind in recollection was akin to entering the ocean with waves upon waves of receding tides. The ocean churned with excitement, causing the temporal scene to appear as if in a vast space, boundless and endless. Although he was clearly in soul form, Luo Nan subconsciously performed the action of drawing in a deep breath. Come then, now is the time to witness miracles. Luo Nan's telepathically touched the control console and extended inside to capture that feeling within his memories. The control console was ice cold, its digital lights flashed. Then, no further response came. Luo Nan waited a full 20 seconds before daring to confirm that his tracing attempts had suffered a most merciless failure. "What's wrong?" Luo Nan still remembered what he experienced that day. He remembered the entire process that caused him to be transporting from the central control room to the tree hole located over 1,000 meters away. Luo Nan remembered looking at the ruins of the smashed control console. The fellow named Tank had destroyed the fire safety module. Luo Nan had tried to activate it once more by using the external neuron to directly connect to the underlying system. He had been sent spinning the moment he connected to the energy module. Oh, yes, the external neuron. Luo Nan's soul spun in place for 5 or 6 revolutions, his mind still retaining emotions of vexation that were difficult to dispel. His mind really had been muddled. It was very probable that the external neuron had acted as a primer, as a key at the time. Otherwise, an average Joe could just waltz in and uncover the shocking mysteries of gear. Back in the day when his mother designed gear, there was also that man who possessed the external neuron. Using the external neuron as a safeguard was the most rational choice. Luo Nan wanted to open the treasure chest, but he forgot the key at home. All right, this was a wasted trip. Next time, when he had the chance. Wait, it was only 4:30 a.m. He still had time. With the flying speed of his soul, it was completely possible to do a round trip. With the slightest stirring of a thought, Luo Nan's soul flew straight up. He went through layers and layers of earth, rock, and metal to directly soar into the skies above gear. Though, originally, Luo Nan was going to immediately leave, but he suddenly felt something when his soul body traveled within the building structure. The lingering chill within the air seemed to cut with minute ripples and undulations at the soul body at several locations. It felt wonderful. Luo Nan couldn't but think of what had happened before. His soul body stopped in place, and his mental senses naturally covered the entire building, taking the structure of gear into his mind. There seemed to be endless discoveries waiting to be unearthed when it came to the marvels of gear. Outside, gear was seamlessly embedded into the heaven and earth format as a tiny part. Inside, gear had subtle and exquisite components that together formed a harmonized whole. According to what Luo Nan learned recently, gear could be generally described as a precision-running mechanical system. Luo Nan had endlessly observed gear over the past many days. He observed each part one by one and could generally discern them. Within the building, there was the central control room, the underground laboratory, the above-ground laboratory, the activity room, and the atrium. There were several pieces of independent areas. They were all parts of this machine, and each fulfilled their respective functions. The machine was constantly running, but each component was fixed. This caused a problem. If the components weren't moving, what was moving? A proper engineer probably would have gone mad when faced with this problem, but Luo Nan's thoughts were influenced by his many days of living in this world. He naturally turned to another train of thought. The components didn't move. Then what moved was some kind of an extraordinary power. The cultural courses he recently took touched upon knowledge involving the mystic arts. For example, the formations of the Orient, the magical spells of the West, and other similar stuff. Ability users used materials, temperature, terrain, the atmosphere, and so on in arrangements. This was to better draw and drive energy, creating a marvelous structure of coalescence and energy. Researchers of the society even included the Wuhu 8 formation of folklore and other similar mystic arts as references. Luo Nan didn't care the least about the Wuhu 8 formation, and its effect which was akin to a stone immovable by the flowing river. He was just driven by the new thoughts that had popped into his mind, and he flew up a certain distance in height to gaze down from afar. He scanned gear from inside to outside once anew several times, opening up new trains of thought. He thought was that chill, coming from nowhere, created by air conditioning. According to the superficial knowledge Luo Nan learned from worker Zhao over these past few days, this sort of mechanical system should have some sort of primary motor to provide motive power to parts, which then realized functions, allowing the transmission to connect the two parts of motive power and work. There were also auxiliary components that, for instance, controlled operation. Luo Nan, a non-mainstream engineering apprentice, would find it truly very difficult to distinguish the marvelous designs of the well-blended mechanical structure. However, tracking the flow of energy was a different story. Luo Nan could roughly judge the locations of transmission, the locations of accumulation, and the locations performing work. Luo Nan's mental senses immediately following the flow of the chill, in and out, to and fro. He followed for a few cycles, eliminating components one after another, gradually shrinking the scope until he reached the westernmost side of gear. This place had a diameter of 12 meters and a depth of 50 meters. It was the atrium. According to Luo Nan's perception, the chill was divided in layers, and each of its flow had a different source. However, practically every layer arrived there in the end, accumulating in its spiraling in all its movements. The dittata sound was clearest here. Luo Nan's soul sunk down to directly enter the atrium. Heart answered with a sensation as he did so. As expected, the psychic pressure of the circulating current was a factor higher here than the other locations in the building. When his soul body cut into this area, ripples clearly undulated on the mental plane, akin to the ripples formed when a pebble was tossed into a deep well. With this toss, Luo Nan was able to confirm the exquisiteness, the subtlety of this flowing energy coalescing here. And this told him that he wouldn't have grasped the changes within were it not for him being in an out-of-body state, were it not for the sharp increase in the precision of his mental senses. Then, what came after the accumulation of the spiraling flow of energy? Why did Luo Nan have an impression that this place was like a deep well? This was because there seemed to be something missing in the atrium, based on the quantity of flowing energy that was coalescing. An order to control the energy flow was missing. The element to lock the whole thing in place was missing. Was it the external neuron, or perhaps? Luo Nan floated within the atrium. He was silent in thought for a while before suddenly strengthening his soul. Based on his current ability, doing the strengthening was as difficult as drinking cool water. The visualization diagram, composed of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an outer-scribed sphere, immediately appeared in the void, enveloping his soul within. The instant this figure manifested within the atrium, Luo Nan discovered that the surrounding chilly flow of energy had been stirred. The flow speed was increasing, going through the visualization diagram, in and out, coiling around, moving step by step. The visualization diagram acted as a pole, and the stirring of the pole gave the gathered flowing energy a lot of order. It also consolidated the energy quite a bit. Most notable were the changes with some messy information. They were gathered up because of this stirring, gradually becoming logical. There was a way. The response grew clearer and clearer with the circulation of the flowing energy. Luo Nan's mental senses were even tinged with color. A faint gray glow gradually filled in. Luo Nan was no stranger to this. In this week, whether it was the day he had that experience, or the times when he was half asleep and half awake in silence, there was always this glow entwined in his memories, reminding him of the existence of a magical world. Chapter 349, To the Cloud, Part 1-3. Translator Strivon. This gray-white glow of paint became motivation in Luo Nan's perspective. He couldn't help thinking, can it be? Can the circumstances back then be recreated without using the external neuron? Luo Nan wanted to know more, and his mental senses naturally expanded, allowing him to discover that his soul's strength was constrained. It was constrained within the atrium, unable to breach outside no matter what he did. It just revolved within the atrium, its speed rapidly increasing. Soul strength didn't possess kinetic energy, nor did it really have vectors to speak of. These were just philosophical elements discussed within the society. Luo Nan was unable to give an accurate definition, but whether it was an illusion or a genuine sensation, his soul's strength undoubtedly appeared in such a state. He thought about the practical physics course he took in middle school. He had seen a particle accelerator. It accelerated charged particles in a vacuum using electromagnetic fields. The particles accumulated more and more energy before ultimately colliding with each other. This was what Luo Nan felt right now. His soul's strength was constrained in this way. It revolved at soaring speeds, forming and sustaining wave after wave of tremendous psychic pressure. The pressure was so much that the line between the mental and the material gradually blurred. This was a structure of the mental plane, and it forcefully revealed itself in prominence. Thousands of layers of curtains soared, following the surge of psychic pressure. They warped one after another. Distant ones pulled closer, and close ones cast afar. It looked like one great mess, but for some reason, after several changes, the thousands of curtains actually interweaved to form a stable structure. No matter how warped the mental plane became, few changes occurred in the main section. Although it was still complicated to the point of madness. This scene seems familiar. Stop. Luo Nan gave up analyzing with firm resolution. The deeper he sank into the mental plane, the more he came to know the complexity of its mysteries and secrets. They were endless, enough to wring one's mental energy dry. Luo Nan really didn't have the energy to think from different angles. The cycling speed continued to increase, catalyzing Luo Nan's soul strength to some kind of limit. His perception on the mental plane quickly began to crumble, and soon he lost perception of the cycling, of the psychic pressure, and so on. The corresponding thoughts were annihilated. It was akin to a skyscraper whose structural frame was erased, immediately causing it to collapse and fall apart. Luo Nan instantly fell into a sheet of chaos. If any bit of consciousness still remained under these circumstances, then only existence itself was probably all that was left. The world went still before exploding apart. There was an indescribable period of time. It might have been a second, it might have been an hour, but Luo Nan was completely unaware of what happened during that time. By the time his basic perception was restored to him, he just sensed the weak feeling of existence as one of the few things remaining. The feeling took on the form of incomparable greed, and it rapidly expanded. It took all ability of thought and perception that had been lost, and seized them back completely, digesting them anew. The endlessly rising psychic pressure disappeared without a trace, and Luo Nan's soul turned light and calm, transparent inside and out. Everything was being restored. Everything was improving, but everything changed into something different. In fact, a whole new world appeared before Luo Nan's eyes. The gray-white glow appeared once more, acting as the universal background, drawing blurry and hazy silhouettes. Soon, the silhouettes became discernible. They were mounds and mounds of clouds, coils and coils of mist, the hailfire of ice crystals. And between the pressed and torn cracks of clouds was a blood-red flowing glow, as if a conflagration burned in the area below. Luo Nan stared at it all, taking the time to confirm that it wasn't an illusion, that it wasn't a memory, that it was occurring in this very moment. This was the scene collected by his mental senses. He had seen a similar scene in the past. Though the process had been different last week, he had looked down from above to view such a scene. He had gone deep within, for a short, yet incredible journey to the cloud. A success, this was it. Luo Nan wanted to wave his arms and yell in exhilaration, but this was something he couldn't do as a soul. He could only settle for the next best thing. He welcomed the astral winds wrapped in the ice crystals of his memories. Wait, where was the wind? Luo Nan discovered the anomaly at last. He tried to control his soul body to enter the endless cloud layer before him, but he was unable to get even a millimeter near no matter how much he exerted himself. It seemed as if a piece of invisible glass stood before him, cutting the two areas apart. Then more problems came out. Luo Nan discovered that he was unable to engage in an all-encompassing view with his soul. He was constrained to something like a bird's-eye view. The sensation of the invisible glass together with this view made it all feel like he was sitting in an airplane. The thick glass window separated him, leaving him only to gaze at the boundless sea of clouds. If Luo Nan never had that first experience, he would probably praise the marvelous scene before his eyes. But there were no ifs in this world. There was only reality. This situation of immobility, of being trapped, was absolutely not what Luo Nan desired. Moreover, this led to another problem. Right now, he wasn't in the atrium of gear. He also hadn't moved to the cloud world. Then where was he? The thought barely formed, and Luo Nan felt some irresistible force repelling him. It took him, who was infinitesimally close to the cloud world, and smacked him down over and over. Then the world spun before his eyes. He couldn't help his scream, and by the time he snapped out of it, the world changed back to its most normal appearance. He had returned to the atrium within gear. Oh my God! The middle obscenity and thought were forcibly erased by Luo Nan. He had nothing to say toward his mother's masterpiece. He was just pissed off with himself. He returned to the normal world, and his all-encompassing senses returned as well. They covered gear from inside out, taking the structure of the atrium and the gathering energy flow into his clairvoyance. He saw everything to the finest detail. So my senses are sharp this time. Luo Nan gritted his teeth in frustration. The range of his mental senses simply exploded, driven by his emotions. They broke away from the constraints of the atrium. There was no wall blocking them, but there should be some sort of retaliating whiplash for his actions. The feelers of his mental senses extended 15 kilometers out in the blink of an eye, reaching toward an area that was 20 kilometers away. They easily covered the entire campus of Acumen College, bringing Cloud City Water Village and most of the large activity area within their perception. Luo Nan was shocked when he snapped out of his minor emotions. This wasn't the directional clairvoyance he used atop Ocean Sky Cloud City. This was an omnidirectional radiation. A radius of 20 kilometers. That was a range of over 1,000 square kilometers. The entirety of Pingjiang district was just that large. The space was enormous, climbing up to the heavens and digging down to the earth. The sheer amount of information from the living beings, even if from simplified life sketches, was of a terrifying quantity. It was an astronomical number. There was an instant when Luo Nan felt he was about to explode. He used all his efforts to constrain his out-of-control mental senses, seeking to reduce the impact. But soon, he received the latest feedback. The impact seemed quite illusionary. The information that should have come did come, but the expected impact didn't occur. The soul simply engulfed the large quantity of information, digesting it like drinking a glass of plain boiled water. Chapter 350, To the Cloud, Part 2-3. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan's mental senses covered over 1,000 square kilometers, simultaneously portraying the life sketches of hundreds of thousands of living beings, projecting millions and millions of stars. The level and range of his mental senses were outstanding, but the first feeling Luo Nan got was far from great. He was unable to get a sense how much his soul could endure. He couldn't help thinking, can it be, are the powers the same? Has formatting theory been stimulated from cultivating here in Mother's work, causing another eruption in uncontrollable growth? Luo Nan knew the dangers of the out-of-body state, but the extent of expansion, the explosive tempo, far exceeded his expectations. Though Luo Nan possessed the god gear upheld by the external neuron, though Luo Nan's liver flowed with energy, allowing the body gear to constantly rotate, his body might not be able to bear it. Luo Nan didn't dare stay in the atrium any longer. He immediately soared upward. But he felt a subtle sensation the moment he cut through the aftermath of the flowing energy all around him, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. It seems like the changes with my soul are quite big this time. The details surrounding his mental senses far exceeded any previous instant in abnormality. Perhaps other aspects were involved aside from a growth in volume. Unfortunately, the details were too many and too tedious. They felt blurry, and Luo Nan was unable to judge what they were within a short time frame. Luo Nan couldn't achieve a clear understanding, and he didn't force it. One problem appearing often led to a series of problems appearing. He needed to return home as soon as possible. He disregarded the external neuron. The utmost priority was to confirm whether or not his body and soul structure would collapse in imbalance once more. Luo Nan's thoughts churned within gear before taking the step back home. Luo Nan soared in the dusky sky of the early morning, his mental senses already covering the route back home. His perception penetrated everywhere, stopping at nothing. Skyscrapers were like masses of smoke. They were practically nothing, Luo Nan rushing straight through. His phantasmal flying soul was like a demon. The more he experienced these things, the more he felt that something was off. His soul's strength had to have increased, but with time as a buffer, Luo Nan felt that the increase in volume wasn't as terrifying as what was previously indicated. At most, it was equivalent to the amount the wraith sign fed from its prey during the time the wraith sign made its first hunt. Luo Nan had some leeway to deal with this sort of increase after forming the body gear. But at the same time, his sensing region was endlessly changing from his high-speed movement, and the range it covered grew greater and greater. He had already broken through a 20-kilometer radius, and this range continued to slowly increase. What was the root cause for this increase? Luo Nan's mind was distracted, but the speed he was traveling at as he made his way back far exceeded his speed when coming. It took a total of 6 minutes to get home, and this was far from his limits. There weren't any changes with the situation at home. Luo Nan's aunt and uncle had tormented themselves for the greater part of the night, but they fell asleep sometime throughout it all. The entire house was very quiet. About a kilometer away on the community streets was the bodyguard dispatched by the society. His eyes were blazing bright as he guarded the monitoring devices. However, whether it were the devices or the bodyguard, none of them had any reaction toward Luo Nan in his out-of-body state. It wasn't that they were unqualified. Astral traveling, what Luo Nan was doing, was an activity on either the absolute realm or the abyssal region of the mental plane. The vast majority of B-rank ability users would be blind to Luo Nan even with open eyes. Luo Nan's soul remained atop the roof of his house. His body, fast asleep below, was like an enormous vortex. His soul was instinctively attracted to it. Luo Nan didn't enter his body in the first instance when faced with this attractive force. He felt slightly hesitant. This was an excellent touchstone to test the increase of his soul's strength and the resilience of his fleshly body. However, dangers lay here as well. If he couldn't stuff his soul inside, he would probably be the biggest laughing stock of the society for earning an unprecedented nickname of being a homeless soul. Though there wouldn't be any deadly crisis to speak of. And Bai Xinyan, who recently suspended her duties to have some fun, would probably be quite delighted to stuff him in a health pod for treatment. No way in hell would that happen. Luo Nan was irritated with his own indecisiveness. A blade would come at him no matter what decision he made. He couldn't avoid it forever. What was he hesitating for? His resolution firm, the soul sank down, its form melting like ice. The inexhaustible surging soul's strength rushed into the vortex that was the body and accurately locked onto the external neuron. It infused within in an orderly fashion. The external neuron filled up and then naturally overflowed, forming the image of the vast ocean iceberg structure. But with the external neuron as a frame, the soul's strength didn't overflow without order. And so the God gear was formed in this way. The pressure endured by the body began at 0 and continued to rise. Luo Nan's eyelids twitched as he lay on his bed, maintaining a half-mast state. He lay there, experiencing the changes occurring with his order frame. The pressure continued to rise, akin to the rush of a great tide. The God gear and the body gear were like water wheels. They rumbled as they rotated within the flow of water. Not only did they dispel the frontal impact of the tide, they even borrowed the power of the tide and transformed it into energy, nourishing the fields of blessing. It looks like there aren't any problems. From the past until now, Luo Nan's cultivations in the eye's orifice gradually completed, but there was always a tiny little hole, an upper bound to what could be endured. The eye's orifice was far from reaching a level where he could display the full power of the God gear. He could only protect the lower limit. That was, ensure that the God gear and body gear could mesh and rotate in harmony. The God gear and body gear significantly differed when it came to volume, but the fear of the consequences was too great to change it. But right now, with the energy flow of his liver unobstructed, the eye's orifice was able to reach his inner organs. The lower limit had increased massively, unbeknown to Luo Nan. The body gear and the God gear had meshed and were rotating. The circulation of blood and energy increased in speed, causing a sharp increase in consumption. But the blood of the liver continued to replenish and adjust, similar to the recharging of batteries. The nourishment of moisture caused growth and development that was everlasting. But then Luo Nan's body gear absorbed too much power, and in this instant, his internal heat grew much stronger. The energy of the liver naturally began to flow away to the fascia, the fingers and toes, and the eye's orifice, giving them rapid growth, nourishment, and refinement. These changes occurred up and down his body, increasing the strength of it. From this, Luo Nan could see that not only weren't there any problems, there seemed to be a possibility for further increases in his cultivation speed. This was absolutely great news. Of course, the increase in soul's strength was still within the scope he could control. This was even better news. Luo Nan confirmed at last that the uncontrollable growth of the soul had merely been a misconception. However, the explosive expansion in the range of his mental senses was fact. Why was this? He simply sat up in his bed, taking the notebook from his bedside. He flipped to a blank page, then started to write and draw. The same actions lead to results that are several times more in quantity than ones in the past. Following normal logic, this means that the process of the actions are naturally more effective. There are improvements to their application. But every operating link is absolutely unique in the current situation. They have to be executed to the letter. This means that the changes have to come from the soul itself. But I've already eliminated the element that's the increase of soul strength. This leaves the structure, the nature. What is the soul? What sort of form does the soul exist as? Such questions were far beyond Luo Nan's cursory scope. The research of the inner world developed for several dozens of years. The details of human civilizations, several thousand years of religious studies, philosophies, mystic arts were all incapable of producing an explanation that could convince everyone when it came to this question. Luo Nan was unable to resolve this question. He could only put it aside as he drew closer to reality. Time was of the essence. He needed to make another trip to Gear and confirm the usage of the external neuron. Oh, the external neuron, how do I take it with me? Luo Nan suddenly became aware of this problem, and he immediately felt like a fool. He never had the ability to move objects with his soul. Chapter 351, To the Cloud, Part 33. Translator, Strivon. The facts proved Luo Nan's worries to be true. When he entered the out-of-body state through his usual method of extracting his soul, the external neuron didn't react whatsoever. It remained a long serpent of lightning, spiraling within his head. It gave off an unperturbed feeling that went along the lines of, "You can come and go, but I'm going to stay here." Yet it would be an injustice to say that he lacked all control over the external neuron. The moment Luo Nan used a more traditional method, the stirring of thought, the external neuron changed places within his head. Its curling lightning flickered and flared, echoing from afar. Just by looking, Luo Nan knew things wouldn't be easy. Luo Nan made a few strokes with his pen on the loose-leaf notebook. The problem still remained, but an idea grew clearer in his mind. The out-of-body state. Using telepathy to spur action. These all appeared to be matters of the mental plane, but in fact, this assumption was wrong. Disregarding the out-of-body state, according to the recent theory he learned, telepathy should actually be something like the guiding of energy through intent. Luo Nan went on to describe the relationships between several essential elements. Call all the energy that could be accumulated by the human body to be vital energy. Vital energy circulated through the entire body, gurgling like water. The external neuron was a parasitic life form. It was a fish that lived in the water. And Luo Nan's thought was like a small stone. Thought itself didn't possess the power to directly push the external neuron, but it could strike the water to incite waves. These waves were large enough to startle the fish, causing the external neuron to affect changes. As for why the external neuron could accurately assess Luo Nan's thoughts, it might be because the external neuron was capable of making intelligent judgments, or there were even subtler mechanisms at work. Luo Nan was subjectively inclined toward the latter. So from this perspective, I will need to use the interference power that resides between the mental and material planes in order to drive the external neuron. Then I have no other option. I'll need to reverse the flow of energy. Luo Nan practically broke out laughing. The most effective method Luo Nan had in achieving interference power was coupling the god gear with the body gear formed from the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The overwhelming dominance of the god gear versus the body gear was the cause of his current problem. It was a problem of direction. Before, Luo Nan always exerted power from the mental plane toward the material plane. Now he had to do something unmaintainable. He had to do the reverse. Theoretically, there was nothing stopping Luo Nan from adjusting the direction of application of the order frame formed from coupling the god gear and the body gear. The initial work had to be carried out within his own head, and for the sake of caution, Luo Nan had to exercise strict control over the intensity of interference. The glow of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice flickered, no longer illuminating above and outside heaven and earth. The glow no longer illuminated through the inner organs. Instead, the heart lantern of the eye's orifice and the lightning serpent of the external neuron shone upon each other, gradually infusing a wisp of warmth. The external neuron rumbled in vibration, crackling as it flared with lightning. It appeared to be a bit uncomfortable. It would occasionally coil up. It would occasionally pierce around. It would occasionally stretch out. It was like a transforming heavenly dragon, magical beyond compare. If he were to disregard the consequences, what he was doing was truly akin to playing with a novel toy. It was utterly fascinating. Luo Nan saw that the form of the external neuron constantly changed, but he noticed that its nature didn't change. It remained the core frame for the god gear, the vast ocean iceberg structure's power running deep, but it was stable in its heaviness. One question: as the core of the god gear, was the god gear of the material or of the mental? Luo Nan didn't have a clear answer, but he did have an unexplainable understanding. The distinction between the material and the mental wasn't that clear, at least in this very moment. Luo Nan carefully experienced this feeling. The flow of intensification of interference between the mental plane and the material plane, the flaring of the heart lantern of the eye's orifices blaze. It had gradually become a furnace to smelt and refine the true gold that was the external neuron. Without heat, one wouldn't know the temperature of the fire. Without heat, one wouldn't know the metal's nature. Similar feelings stirred within Luo Nan when he followed Gym Master Zhu's teachings in refining life essence. Only when one truly put his hands to the task could he receive certain information, could he brand certain impressions. Perhaps this principle could be used upon the external neuron. In any case, Luo Nan immersed himself in this process of refining true gold. He was completely oblivious to the passage of time. This lasted until the hexia began to push information to him, vibrating against his eardrum. It sent a clear notification to him. A new day had begun. Right now, it was 4:55 in the early morning. According to Luo Nan's daily routine, it was already his morning exercise time. Oh shoot! Luo Nan was startled awake. He smacked his head with his notebook in shock at the time. Or maybe I should spend some more time refining. The thought barely formed, just to be suppressed by Luo Nan. It was already time for his morning sessions. Gym Master Zhao always had been strict about matters of impulse, making a mess of his tempo. He warned Luo Nan, expressively prohibiting it. He couldn't push the schedule back. Recently, he strictly followed his schedule in work and rest. The security measures set up by the society were done in accordance to his schedule. Sudden changes would cause a lot of people trouble. Needless to say, he aborted his plan on exploring the two gears. Luo Nan couldn't help feeling depressed. He could only suppress his impulse and adjust his mind, using the Tao Yin he learned early on to sort through these tiny weed-like emotions. A few bumpy minutes later, the powerful force of inertia pushed him back on the right track. His morning session was 40 minutes long, and his morning run took around twice the time. Luo Nan returned home at 7, and his uncle had finished making breakfast as usual, waiting for Luo Nan so that they could start eating. His aunt was in the living room. Her head was lowered as she fiddled with her wristband. Her face had slight makeup, and she didn't have the dispirited feeling one might expect out of someone who had a hard time sleeping. She saw that Luo Nan had come home and nodded at him with her jaw. "Today, there's something your uncle needs to do a bit early. Today's morning rhythm is faster because of this." "Oh," Luo Nan responded. He couldn't help pondering things in his mind. How could he make his aunt and uncle feel at ease? He would have to trouble Secretary He for this. Luo Nan headed upstairs to wash up. He reached the stairs, where he saw Mo Peng come over yawning. Mo Peng gave Luo Nan a bleary-eyed morning as he headed down the stairs. They merely brushed past each other, and Mo Peng remembered something. He went, "Hey," and reached out to grab onto Luo Nan's shoulder. But his fingers weren't even able to touch Luo Nan's clothes when his palm cut across. Mo Peng very nearly sprained his shoulder. "Why are you running?" Mo Peng complained loudly. "You're just too fat." Luo Nan turned to look at Mo Peng. Currently, the level of his body's movements was as different as heaven and earth when compared to Zhu Lei's and Crag Burst's with their physically enhanced bodies. But he was strengthened by the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Little fatties like Mo Peng, who lacked tempered bodies, could only dream of stopping Luo Nan. Mo Peng pointed at Luo Nan with a fat finger. "Oh, okay, so it's in with the new and out with the old. You're just living off one person but helping others in secret. Something good just happened, and to think, I wanted to tell you." Luo Nan rolled his eyes and headed to his room. "The hell, man, you've just been hanging out with that Lister all day and every day. Haven't you ever thought about when was the last time us brothers have gone out for some fun?" Luo Nan already entered his bedroom, so he said in passing, "I'm in Acumen College. You're in 6th middle. If you want to hang out, just skip class and come over." Mo Peng gave him a big thumbs up. "My bro is psychic." Luo Nan finally looked him in the eyes. "You've been skipping class." "Quiet, quiet." Mo Peng jumped in fright. It must be known that his mother was in the living room. He pushed Luo Nan inside. He was about to say something, but when he saw just how clean Luo Nan's room was, he couldn't help mocking him. "Perfectionist, OCD, neat freak." Luo Nan prepared to kick this guy out. Mo Peng shrunk back. All right, I'll talk about proper matters. Have you received the compensation from Frost River Reality yet?" What? It's because of that time at the city center. With all the chaos, they're giving every customer on-site higher membership status as compensation. Those who aren't members gain membership. Those who are members go up completely to the next level. Other than that, they're giving out luxurious gift bags or something. Have you gotten yours yet? From Luo Nan's perspective, there weren't any good memories of Frost River reality. He entered the bathroom and adjusted the water temperature, asking in passing, "Then so what?" So what? After an increase in membership status, the cost is at least 20% off, okay. And there's the coupon they've sent us. It's practically 80% off. Stacking these two together means that it's practically free. It's the best time to go out and have some fun. Luo Nan sneered. "Y'all can go if you have the guts. Just don't go looking for me the next time you enter the police station. We certainly won't have the mood to go to the Frost River reality in the city center. But haven't they opened a branch near your school? In other words, Cloud City Water Village. Their equipment is supposed to be the best out of the whole city. Bro, the time to show off has come. Hey, what are you doing? Showering out of my way." Luo Nan gave Mo Peng a push. Right now he could easily crush this chunky littler brother with his current strength. He simply pushed him out the door. Mo Peng didn't give up trying to convince Luo Nan. Running and training like this every day, even if you get some muscle, what use is it? It's better to take the social route, so you have the chance to show off. Still don't understand. This is a group date. I promise that I will bring the highest quality girls from 6th middle. You can't abandon the people of the Mo family, of the Luo family. At the very least, you must. Let me know when you can truly make it happen. I'm pressed for time. Listen to me, bro. With the few friends you have, Mom will certainly be worried about you forever. You'll be a mama's boy forever. Oh, I mean Auntie's boy. Hey, what about that apartment in Blue Bay? Are you going to let it collect dust? Luo Nan had always wanted to go out and live by himself. This wasn't a secret in his home. However, the earthquake in September and his repeated trips to the hospital last month had ruined his hopes. But Mo Peng didn't know the reason why Luo Nan wanted to live by himself. It was mainly for the sake of synthesizing drugs in secret. At this time, he had no motivation to do so. Plus, Luo Nan went through a series of incidences where he offended major powers. Luo Nan really didn't know if it was better to move out and thereby draw firepower, or to stay near family to better assist them in case something happened. It was really annoying to think of these matters. Luo Nan simply closed the door, ignoring Mo Peng's shouts outside. He entered the bathroom to go shower. The Hexia suddenly transmitted information to him the moment he stood under the shower head. It was none other than Zhang Yingying. The message was very short. It consisted of 2 sentences. "Be more active, don't let people look down on you." This message came out of nowhere, and Luo Nan replied with a question mark. Zhang Yingying didn't respond. It seemed that she was still brooding over the message he sent yesterday. Fortunately, there was a document attached to the message. Luo Nan browsed through the document as he showered with warm water. This was an internal report Peony made to the firm. There was no doubt that it was related to the search task of the mutant. Luo Nan could see that Peony had a better grasp over the comprehensive situation after brewing in thought over the course of the night. She already proposed a program of action of the greatest feasibility. Luo Nan was certain that he would be incapable of producing such a plan if it was required of him. But the document was different from the one shared yesterday in the cloud space. This report was presented to the high-level members of the firm to read. It contained more sensitive details. For example, an evaluation of the partner. Chapter 352, Paying Tuition. Translator, Strivon. It was 7:15 a.m. Luo Nan hurriedly dug into his meal with several bites. He grabbed his aunt's super-stuffed meat pie and a cup of milk, and he sat inside his uncle's SUV. He displayed the extraordinary power of the Appetite King as he ate, and drank the rest of his breakfast completely clean before the car could even leave the community. He opened the window and threw the empty paper cup quite accurately into a roadside trash can. The level of his moving target shooting skills blew the minds of the majority of people on the street. Uncle Mo Heihang shot Luo Nan a glance as he closed the window. "That's not a magic trick, right? How can it be? See, it hasn't been a waste for me to learn martial arts." Luo Nan still remembered clearly the scene of his guardians racking their brains atop their bed. Luo Nan felt ashamed. He subconsciously spoke in jest. "Look at my skills, my aim, uncle. You should take me to shooting one of these days. It's been a few years. I don't even remember which way the door opens in the shooting center." "Sure, it's rare for you to ask something," Mo Heihang readily agreed. Then he casually asked, "How's school been treating you these days? I mean, has your social circle gotten any bigger?" Luo Nan could feel that his uncle's words had a deeper meaning behind them. He grunted a few times and said some vague things in worry. It was not very convincing, but then Luo Nan recalled a matter he was dealing with. He changed his speech superficially, asking for guidance. "Uncle, how do you work together with people? There was a school society activity that I participated in. We formed temporary teams to do stuff together, but I don't understand how to do things better." Mo Heihang responded while driving the car. "So it's a team, eh? Then you need to understand your role in the team. Whether it's the leader or the planner, the technical staff or logistics, make sure everyone is satisfied with their role." This answer was too comprehensive. Luo Nan was dissatisfied. He said, "These are team positions." "Yes, since we are talking about working together, naturally we need to talk about the team." Luo Nan rolled his eyes. "I want to know how to get the respect of others in the team from the point of view of an individual." Mo Heihang's eyes remained on the road, not looking at Luo Nan. He laughed in reply. "The concept of respect is too vague. There isn't a universal standard. Everyone's role is set in a different way, so the way they express their respect is different. A fellow who believes himself to be the leader may express his respect to his subordinates as praise. But would the target of that praise believe he is being respected if he doesn't believe that he is a subordinate? Oh, makes sense. So don't talk about the relationships within the environment if the environment hasn't taken form yet. The environment can change as it pleases. For example, respect can be a reward or a price. Your temporary team needs to first become a qualified team before further discussion." Luo Nan withdrew from this topic. Listening to his uncle, an intellectual, speak was very brain cell burning. He closed his eyes and looked at Peony's evaluation in the internal report. The person known as Crow has an unknown level of profession. The initial judgment for Crow's temperament is introverted. Crow's not good at communication, and Crow lacks initiative. It may be more suitable for Crow to be considered an aide. There may be room for bargaining for future collaboration. This was his partner. The operation hadn't even started and she's seizing power in the team dynamic. How unduly, and she wants to bargain. Luo Nan admired Peony's acuity and judgment, but this sort of behavior made him feel unwell. It also made him doubt Peony's plan. It must be known that this outsourcing of work was a form of compensation given to him by Her Majesty Empress Wu. Whatever the case, he wouldn't be given less than the anticipated value. The way Peony expressed herself clearly showed that she was in a relatively normal position within the firm. She didn't have a feel for her boss's intent. Hold on a sec. This didn't seem like Peony's style. Luo Nan read the words, being fastidious about the phrasing, and he suddenly understood. The so-called bargaining was perhaps not a shot at reducing funds for the outsourced worker, but instead a solicitation in recruitment for future work. This was quite a brilliant move if this was the case. At the very least, she was able to understand some of Her Majesty Empress Wu's intentions, but Luo Nan decided that it would be better to first consult with He Yueyin before arriving at conclusions. Luo Nan felt very tired with this sort of person on the team who wanted to seize the upper hand. Then Mo Heihang spontaneously spoke to Luo Nan. I have a general idea of what you're thinking about. You feel that there needs to be a target or a paradigm in order to do stuff. If you really don't know what to do, then learn from me. I feel that us two are quite alike. See if what I say suits you. Luo Nan immediately went teary-eyed. This is just what I wanted. I have a personal motto, take a look. Mo Heihang sent him a message. It was very short, consisting of only 2 sentences. He who stands on his tiptoes does not stand firm. He who stretches his legs does not walk easily. Luo Nan was lost in thought for a time. He had read this classic script when he was a kid, and recently he followed Gym Master Zhao in studying classical martial arts. Gym Master Zhao crammed him full of this kind of knowledge. He recognized that this was a saying from the Book of the Tao by Laozi. The first sentence meant that when one looks afar by standing on their tiptoes, they stand unsteadily. The second sentence meant that when one stretches their gait to make large strides for faster movement, they won't be able to get far. These 2 sentences were followed by, so, he who displays himself does not shine. He who asserts his own views is not distinguished. He who vaunts himself does not find his merit acknowledged. He who is self-conceited has no superiority allowed to him. And so on in a long series. There was a general idea. Actions that were made carelessly and impatiently, selfishly and boastfully, were unreliable. There were also deeper meanings. Sometimes one must retreat to make progress. One must let things take their own course, and things will naturally resolve, and so on. Fine, this was indeed a style of doing things. It matched his uncle, whose words and actions were low-key in daily life, quite well. However, the current circumstances weren't like this. Mo Heihang didn't know the knot in Luo Nan's heart. He even asked, "Do you understand?" "I understand. Oh, uncle, do you have anything else?" "I do. For instance, a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving." "I know." "Then there's also, know the masculine, hold the feminine, be the fountain of the world. Know the white, hold the black, be an example for the world, be an example for the world, forever virtuous and unchanging. Return to the infinite. The carving of wood forms tools. The sage uses the tools to become the ruler, thus keeping the great whole undivided." Luo Nan was scared. He simply recited out the entire passage. There could be 100 sentences or 80 sentences within the Book of the Tao by Laozi. It made no difference to him. This really wasn't what he needed. Mo Heihang laughed heartily. "Look, you've already thought about what to do. Your mind is obviously very clear. Why do you need to ask me?" Luo Nan knew that he had been played with and was left speechless for a time. Actually, he wasn't interested in any possible methods. It wasn't absolutely necessary to keep Peony down. If it were up to him, he would rather stay idly in his corner in peace and refine the external neuron. He wanted to carefully experience this process of refinement and see what sort of results he would ultimately obtain. However, matters had to be attended to before he could obtain this peace and quiet. There was no use telling others of this bind he was in. Mo Heihang twirled his fingers around his temples. Let me guess what you're thinking. You want to do something, but you don't know whether or not you can do it. So you want to find a paradigm of success. Like a formula. You want to input all sorts of parameters and get the complete answer. Luo Nan gulped. I just want a reference. Mo Heihang nodded, but then he shook his head and sighed. Nanan, how old are you again? 16. What a great age. Back when I was 16, I knocked a classmate up. My dad found out and kicked me down the stairs, leaving me with a bloody mouth. Holy cow, what gossip. Luo Nan's jaw dropped to his chest, not closing for quite some time. Mo Heihang's eyes were glued ahead. He was smiling quite delightedly as he recalled memories of his irretrievable youth. But Luo Nan ultimately was the final topic of the day. I haven't given you a smacking since you turned 10, am I right? I think so. A kid in his teens, second time developing, the stage of puberty, the rebellious period. What a wonderful stage in life, and it passed just like that. Is uncle very disappointed that he never had the chance to beat me up? As Luo Nan cursed under his breath, new words poured into Luo Nan's ear. Do you think I should be happy that you're mature for your age? Or should I be worried that there are problems with your physical development and mental growth? Luo Nan raised his head in astonishment, meeting Mo Heihang's cold and clear gaze. He understood the seriousness within them. Humans have never been perfect creatures. The evolution of this species is one filled with trial and error. At most, we get by with some good enough luck. So society is very cruel, but it always gives people a bit of room for trial and error. This is true especially so for young people. Your father's societal format diagram has a separate box for students. Those that are in it are people who pay tuition. His uncle's words had the certain earnestness of a scholar. Luo Nan was a bit confused. He didn't know what sort of attitude he should respond with. In the end, he just mumbled in agreement. Mo Heihang continued with what seemed like an interrogation. Then Nanan, tell me, why are you so stingy with tuition? Are you prepared to repress all flaws and wait till a more brutal stage to lose everything? Luo Nan didn't even have the energy to grunt. He felt that today's uncle was completely different from his normal uncle. Perhaps the matter from last night made his uncle make some cognitive associations, and right now his uncle was probing his behavior. Luo Nan really wanted to say that it was a misunderstanding. There wasn't any odd organization that found him, but he thought a bit deeper. The nature of the situation he was facing was quite similar. Wasn't this an issue that Her Majesty Empress Wu and her people created? His brain churned for a while before he barely thought of something to say. So you're saying I should wade the river by groping for stones, feel my way around, and fall down a few times, right? You uncle and aunt are like a wolf and a hawk, okay. That's enough, I know that uncle, you don't like my student life. Luo Nan did his best to disrupt the atmosphere. He grumbled, know the masculine and hold the feminine, know the white and hold the black, know honor and hold disgrace. Suffering is fortune, I can handle it. Isn't that enough? Mo Heihang quietly looked at him. The serious, cold and clear intent ultimately washing away from his gaze. Warmth returned to him as he smiled and said, "If only. Right, the thing I just mentioned to you about when I was young. You need to seal your mouth shut. Unless you really want me to beat you." Luo Nan blinked his eyes. "Didn't you say that I should have the courage to pay tuition? Oh God." Luo Nan felt a breeze by his ear. Mo Heihang had grabbed onto it. Of course, he didn't use force. Even if he did, it would be useless against Luo Nan, who was strengthened by the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The car became quite lively, and the automatic driving system of the car displayed its function properly. Within the noisy laughter, Luo Nan knew that certain matters had changed into something different, and he had to get used to these changes. The car had yet to arrive at Acumen College, but far away in a certain park in the River Wu district, an enormous crow flapped its wings as it flew off into the sky. It followed the river of the city and the green vegetation surrounding it as it flew in low altitudes. A rubber band tied to its leg faintly vibrated, immediately sending information to the crow. About 10 minutes later, Luo Nan entered the school campus 40 kilometers away in the Pingjiang district. As for ink, it already found its target, and it plunged into an ordinary SUV parked by the roadside. That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.